development, which is a way to connect people who are kind of rising niche voices with ambitious brands. I'm a big believer in creating your MVP for user number 1, not user number 1,000. The MVP should be the MVP. People get very overly ambitious when it comes to building, and I think this is kind of what this links back into. I'm very tech agnostic. I'm quite a big fan of working on what you know and what you're productive in. My personal background is in React, Next, and Node, but I'm not going to hate you if you choose to use a different technology. Ultimately, the best programming language is the one you already know. So, without further ado, what does VAN stand for? We've got V for Vercel. So this stack is built on Next.js, which you're going to hear more about in a minute, but it is logical to use a technology created by the maintainers of Next.js. So Vercel, they took over maintaining Next.js a couple of years ago now, and in my opinion, they've done a really good job. There's been the odd bump in the road with new launches, but that's because they have been working at such a cadence to really provide a best-in-class JavaScript experience. There's honestly no better way to deploy an app than Vercel. I genuinely would challenge anyone in this room right now to beat how quickly you can deploy something on Vercel. All you need to do is be logged into GitHub, be logged into Vercel, and if it's a Next.js app, literally the default settings, you just import the repo, and then literally like magic, you suddenly have it deployed to several different domains, including branches, which is unbelievable considering it's a free tier, and the actual experience to mapping it to a proper domain is ridiculously easy. Also as well, many of us here, because this is a JS meetup, are going to be less comfortable with kind of hardcore infrastructure work. And I'm not afraid to admit I'm very far from a DevOps engineer. I break out into sweat a little bit when I have to do some kind of AWS task a lot of the time. So this is far easier to use if you're less comfortable with infrastructure. The error logs are really clear. You know what's kind of going on, and you don't have to really dig into the weeds. There's far less potential for something to go wrong. A for AWS. So we're probably not going to be interacting directly with AWS much, but it's important to remember Vercel and Supabase, which are 2 out of the 4 in this stack, are abstractions of AWS services, which is a common criticism, and I'm sure people will bring it up to me at some point. So it is important to remember it for that reason. AWS, it's got a lot of miscellaneous features that you might find useful that we don't directly have access to in other parts of the stack. So 2 examples I've got here, SES, Simple Email Service. I believe you get 65,000 emails per month for free on that, which is like ridiculously cheap. And S3, which I didn't know stood for Super Simple Storage, which is, that's why it's 3 S's. So Supabase has a built-in storage solution, but S3 is slightly better when it comes to cost, so you might want to consider using that as well. N is for Next.js. So the reason why I quite like Next.js is because the full stack is basically in one code base, in one language. So everything from the very front end down to the API layer is in one language. You don't need to context switch. You're in the same code base. Everything is easier to understand like that. I understand why some people might want to separate it, but particularly if we're launching things as a solo entrepreneur, it's probably the best way to do it. You always have SEO benefits with Next.js as it's server-side rendered. So that means that the search engine bots are able to work out what's on the page before the actual render, because it's rendered on the servers. So it's way easier for Google to tell what's going on your website. So it's going to rank much higher, which, again, everything comes back to commercial viability here. That's why SEO is so important. It's something, honestly, we don't think about much as the average dev. I know I didn't until fairly recently in my career. It's built on top of React, which is great because loads of JS devs know React, but also as well it supports a ton of React libraries. Again, we're talking about being pragmatic here. Why would we reinvent the wheel when there's plenty of amazing libraries out there that we can use? Nowadays, Tailwind as well comes bundled with it for styling, which I'm a massive fan of. You can then bolt on something like Daisy UI to give you an extra kind of bit of Tailwind, pardon the pun, around Tailwind and make it much quicker, much easier to use, and much more uniform. And we're getting towards the end of the stack now. S is for Supabase. I actually think this is like the trump card of the stack, and it's why you're able to scale so quickly. So the reason for that is it's got a crazy generous free tier with a load of amazing features out the box. So you're going to really be looking at the point where you're making enough money that you can pay someone to handle a lot of the tricky stuff if you're bumping up against the Supabase Pro tiers. If you're front-end focused, it's a really good way of understanding some complicated database like issues and concepts. So for me, I was really uncomfortable with relational databases for a very long time before I got to Supabase. Ironically, not using these things directly and using them through an abstraction made my understanding of them much better. It comes with very powerful auth out of the box, which is an absolute lifesaver. I know some people say to roll our own auth, but it scares me a little bit to do that because it's so much responsibility, and I'd rather have very, very smart people doing that for me. And also as well, the client and server library makes database queries a lot easier. So you can skip out on the API layer if you need to. Your app maybe doesn't even need an API. It can just interact with Superbase directly, which is incredibly powerful because Superbase is essentially a whole backend as a service. You have your databases, you have serverless functions, you have authentication. There's tons in there, which, for having the free tier it does is absolutely ridiculous. You can have up to like 50,000 monthly active users. There's quite a lot of storage involved and tons of bandwidth, so I highly recommend that as well. I think the important thing that I close out on here as well is that you can pick and choose from parts of this stack, and I just highly recommend this if you want to basically build something pragmatically, quickly, that will scale. There's a lot of people who spend loads of time setting up like enterprise tier infrastructure for their startup that they haven't even launched yet, and I just think it's a poor use of time compared to something like this, which will do an amazing job out of the box. But if anyone has any questions later, I don't think we're doing questions now, but if anyone's got any questions later, do feel free to come up because I'm super passionate about this, and I have a full YouTube video on this as well if anyone wants to find out more. But thanks, everyone.
Thank you. That's fantastic. I'm sure it is so tempting to do things like try and roll our own auth, but to have a start like that just makes everything so much easier. So thank you. And thank you as well for pointing out that I didn't mention this, but yeah, if we could sort of keep questions to the end, it's a nice way to get people talking to each other and make sure everyone has enough time to speak. So thank you so much for that. Find them at the end. Next up, we have Sigurd, who's going to talk to us about end-to-end testing.
Slideshare.
I'll tap to the desktop. Your things also be.
How do you do it? Tap. Oh, PDF.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. I did change the ordering, but that's fine. Okay, cool. Cool. Hello, I'm Sigurd. I'm a web developer. I did CodeClan in 20.
It sounded like a heart rate.
It's nice. I'm a web developer. I've been a web developer 3 years. I did CodeClan back in the day when it was a thing. And today I'm going to talk about end-to-end testing, as it's a thing that I've done a decent amount of. I've done quite a lot of Cypress tests at my first company. And then I've been playing around with Playwright recently, which I think is really cool. And then WebDriver.io. So those are the three big testing frameworks. There we go. Those are like, per the research I've done, WebDriver.io, Cypress, and Playwright are the three big players. Playwright is like the new kid on the block, only been around for 4 years or so, but has got some really powerful features that I'm going to chat to you about today. So just a little question, who here has written end-to-end tests? Okay, and who here has like a preferred one that they feel like kind of strongly about? Okay, so a few. So I've done, I was tasked with researching end-to-end tests at my last company because we were deciding which framework we were going to use. And so that was like, I watched lots of YouTube videos and Medium articles and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of, yeah, just given me all the research I need in order to have already done this talk, basically. So first of all, yeah, just weekly downloads. WebDriver is less popular from what we can go on, so that's not the most important thing. Documentation, so that's quite an important thing. Cypress is really good. It's got some really good stuff on best practices. There's a lot of debate about selectors, how you should be using selectors in testing, and that's a debate that each company has. But basically, Cypress kind of puts their opinions out, which is really, really good. WebDriver.io is a bit more difficult to navigate, and yeah, Playwright is really, really good as well, I thought. And yes, integration to Cucumber. So that was one of the first things that we looked at when we were researching this, because Cucumber is really powerful to use alongside testing. What is Cucumber? It's when you can use Gherkin syntax where you just write commands and you tie these to actions. So basically your command, user visits a page, and then this is like your Cypress command here, and then you just put in the string. Oh, that's the same thing twice. Oh well. And so yeah, it's really, really useful and allows you to write tests. And the ultimate idea is that product people will be able to do it, but it just means that you can write tests really, really quickly. In Playwright, it is a bit difficult to set up. Cypress is straight away, and WebDriver.io, it is pretty tricky to set up, but still possible. Developer experience. So we're going to talk about this in more detail. This whole talk is basically about the developer experience of each of these three things. But in short, this will be flaky tests. WebDriver.io is like more known for having flaky tests. I watched a YouTube video with like 8 really, really experienced developers that are like their tech leads in their respective companies, and they were talking about, I use WebDriver.io, I use Cypress, I use Playwright. What have been your experiences? Some of them have even migrated their tests to like mostly Playwright, it has to be said, from WebDriver.io. And yeah, so flaky tests are basically when your tests pass locally, or they fail on the CI, or they just fail locally sometimes for some reason, but then you do them again and they work straight away. So that can be a pretty frustrating thing as a developer, but less likely in Cypress and Playwright from my experience and from the research that I've done. Then documentation, we've already covered that. Community, there's, good communities in all three of them. I have to say, Cypress is maybe the most active, because Playwright is a little bit newer. And easy to set up. So WebDriver.io is very flexible. In fact, we'll go into debugging tools. That's really important as well. So in Cypress and Playwright, you have really, really powerful debugging tools. And yeah, I was going to do a little demo, but I don't think it's possible. And basically, you go through all your tests, and you can see where it's failed, and then you can pinpoint exactly like what element it tried to click. Maybe it tried to click another element, and you can see what it was doing before, what it was doing after, and you have complete control over the window. You can even see in the console for console errors, so that's really, really useful. And in Cypress and Playwright, you can do this, and you've got, this is the one for Cypress, but you've got a very similar one for Playwright. It's also really good. And even when you run these things on the CI, for Cypress, you get screenshots. For Playwright, you get, I think it's very similar to this. It's even more powerful on Playwright. And then WebDriver.io, there are, basically, there's very few tools. You get, you run your test, you can see all the logs in the terminal, and then after that, the window just closes, and there's no way of seeing what the console errors are, what actual element it tried to click. So it is much more difficult to debug in WebDriver.io, I found, and I don't think there even is like an add-on for that. In WebDriver.io, it's like very, very customizable, and you can add whatever you want in, but for that, it's not possible. And then mobile testing, very important, especially for some organizations. If you have a mobile app, for example, you obviously want to test that. Cypress is not possible. In Cypress testing, you have your window, and you can make your window 400 pixels or whatever, but it's not an actual mobile environment. So that is a limitation, especially if you have a mobile app as your product. And in Playwright, yes, it does it out of the box. There's just a TS file, and you just have your objects, and you type in Safari 12 iPhone, and then you get it, and you can even run it on a Windows computer or Linux or whatever. So it's really quite amazing. I was very impressed by that. WebDriver.io, it is possible, but it does require some setup. ... I've never done it. Wouldn't want to try. So Playwright is literally, you have your file, and you just say exactly what you want, and you get it straight away. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame, but that might be why. I think, things are moving more in the direction of Playwright these days. And then, in a similar way, Playwright, you can just do what you want. Cypress, it is good. Cypress installed browsers, so if you have a Mac OS, you can have Safari, whatever. But if you are using Windows computer, then you can't really test. On the CI, yes, any of them do work. I will say that on the CI, we used to have our tests and we would have them running 100% and we put them on the CI and then 60% of them were passing. And then we worked really hard to get them up to 80 or 90%. But tests are not really useful unless they're 100% passing on the CI, because if 90% are passing, you just be like, oh, well, it's always like that. And then it just goes down to 80 and no one really, really looks. So yeah, CI testing is tricky, but there are really pretty good debugging tools. I could maybe even show you some of them on this laptop. Code generation of tests, that is a really, really cool feature that only Playwright has. Basically what you do is you have your VS Code window, you download the Playwright extension, and then after that, you say, I want to do some recording, is what it is. Opens up a browser window, you type in the website that you want to visit, and then you click through if you want to buy a pair of shoes. You click through the form, you buy the pair of shoes, and then it saves all the commands, and then that's your end-to-end test. You don't have to write a single line of code. So really, really useful for prototyping stuff, and if you want to get some tests really, really quick. I think those are most of the big things I wanted to talk about. Have I got any time, Jamie, for... Have I got time? OK, cool. So something I did recently was... Cool. Just be lots of JavaScript stuff. Oh dear, what? For those of you who know me, you will know that I play music, and I have a band, and I have a website, and on this website we have a contact form, and it's a WordPress website, and the contact form breaks all the time, and then I would get no contact forms for a week, and I'd be like, what's happening? Go on the website, it was broken. And so what I did was I wrote a Playwright. It's super, super quick. You just do npm install Playwright, and then I did the code generation, and then from that I was able to get just a flow of doing a contact form, and then I run that in the CI every day, Monday to Friday, from I think it's at 9:30, and then every morning I get a bunch of emails from Playwright or emails from myself submitted through Playwright, and it's just it's just like a tiny little application. What code have you get? Let's see if I can find myself. There we go. Repositories, Playwright 7 Hills, actions. Yeah, so these are all the GitHub actions. It runs every single day. And then if we go to one that has failed, that's quite interesting, because then you can see where it's it'll show you, and then there'll be some files down here, which you can download, which I probably am not going to be able to find right now. Yeah, artifacts. And then yeah, you just download that, and then it gives you, I probably won't open up right now, actually, but, or if I could do that. Yeah. We're going into the depths of Jamie's hard drive there. But you just open it up, and then it brings up a little window, and then you can see exactly where your test has failed, and you can click around all the different steps, and it's super, super useful. And yeah, it's really easy to set up. This, you just there's just an environment file. You tell it when you want the test to run, Monday to Friday, every day. You could have it every 10 seconds if you want. And then you can see the actions being performed here. You can see that it was run 8 hours ago. It took a minute and a half, and it all went fine. And then, yeah, the repo itself is it's just got a test folder with one test in it and a package JSON. So it's super, super easy. Playwright make it, yeah, really, really simple. So I'd highly recommend it. If you've never done it before, just npm install Playwright, do the screen recording, and then do a test on any website you like. And then you can just watch it run in the CI every day, and it gives you confidence that your website, for me, I know that the contact form is working every single day because I get an email saying, or I get an email from myself with a submitted contact form, which is really, really useful. And it doesn't cost me any money because it just, you just do it in GitHub Actions. You would think, oh, I need to create a whole Docker environment and blah, blah, blah. But no, you just GitHub Actions, and it's super, super simple. I don't think it's as simple, definitely not in WebDriver.io and in Cypress. I don't think it's quite as easy, but to run things in the CI, that is. To do the tests, yes, but to run things in the CI with that integration, I don't think they've made it that simple. But anyway, that's all I have to say today, and chat to me about this if you want.
Thank you so much. Really interesting again. Next up we have John, who's going to talk about Quarto and blogging. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so that's my presentation on Quarto, written in Quarto, about a Quarto blog. And if I go on to John, let's see, John Minton, John blog. Yeah, this is the actual, this is a blog post in the blog that I'm talking about containing, so this is written in Quarto, containing the link to that, so that's how I actually remember where this is. Quarto produces documents called, with the suffix QMD. So what does MD stand for? Yeah, it's Markdown, so it's some variation of Markdown. And I guess the basic idea is Markdown is, you could kind of see it originally as like a simplified HTML that abstracts some of that away. But then you've got Jupyter Notebooks, which is like this idea that you have bits of technical code and, you know, so kind of instructions for people and instructions for computers. You've got Markdown, which is kind of simplified HTML plus styling, that sort of thing. So it's providing a bit of an abstraction layer. My interest in building a Quarto blog, basically I've got much more of a history in, I guess, a kind of as a data scientist than as a software developer. But you can't help but realize that there are similarities. There's an overlap. So I used R as, R is basically a programming language not written by programmers. It's written by engineers, and it's really weird. And it's very permissive, but in quite strange ways. You know, maybe even more permissive than JavaScript. And within R, you can build websites using something called Shiny. And you know you're using R, and at the end of it, you compile, and you've got basically a bundle of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and it's somewhere in the cloud, and you've got no idea how it's doing that, because that's not the training. If you're coming from the data scientist space. So I knew I was doing software development without knowing how, and that concerned and frustrated me. So I kind of corrected it in a very expensive way, which is I went on a Code Clan software development course, one of the last before it finished. I was mainly drawn to that because of Python, because Python seems much more of in theory, more of a compromise or a meeting point between software development and data science. But you know, increasingly I've found myself drawn to JavaScript, because the thinking bit of a lot of what we see and interact with on a daily basis is JavaScript. And I've kind of been playing with this contradiction of, do I want to go into the details, or do I want to sort of abstract things away? So I've got, for instance, a website that I kind of built in React, but I used semantic HTML. I designed all of the CSS and that sort of thing. I kind of tortured myself making something vaguely presentable, and I hardly ever touch it. Whereas on the other hand, I've got this Quarto blog where I think it allows enough customizability and enough style, enough sort of out-of-the-box features, but it's also very easy to just add a new bit of content to it. You know, so what is Quarto? In one way, you can see it as a successor to R Markdown. You can also see it as a spiritual It's spiritually influenced by things like Jupyter notebooks. It doesn't care what kind of language you're thinking about. You know, if you're used to R or Python or Julia, observable.js, this is basically a way of doing a lot of data science in JavaScript. It doesn't really care about what sort of IDE you're using. I used to use RStudio a lot more, but for this I tend to use VS Code, and it produces a whole load of different types of outputs. So this website is Quarto, a presentation, Reveal.js, but the blog is Quarto as well. One way of thinking about how it works, you've got basically the front matter, YAML. So you've got 3 sets of equals, a pair of 3 sets of equals for the kind of front matter, 3 sets of backticks where you specify the engine for producing chunks, and 3 sets of colons, which are called fences, for producing kind of semantic styling and that sort of thing. So as long as you get into that way of thinking, it then becomes very easy to, you know, to just kind of dip in, to start styling things, customize them a bit more if you want to, but also, you know, kind of abstracts away a lot of the thinking. You know, you don't have to put P everywhere or that sort of thing. You know, you can write it in this way that's a bit simplified, where you can just focus a bit more on what you're trying to write rather than how you're writing. And in terms of the blog itself, I tend to write things where I overthink stuff. So I tend to write, on the one hand, a lot of things that are very statistical, where I've got equations, and it, you know, it connects well with LaTeX and code chunks. Mermaid, has anyone used Mermaid? Yeah, so it's very good for that sort of thing. That's just another type of chunk, but it's good to. I just want to think about the thing that I'm trying to think about, not also too much about the implementation as well. So for me, for now, the website's great. It makes it very easy. There's a blog by Albert Rapp, who's a German data scientist. If you want to customize it beyond what the standard website has to offer, he's got great ideas there. You can have kind of collections. So let's see what I've got here. I've got one little collection that's just got all of the statistical stuff, and there's various figures and equations there. But then there's another where I'm overthinking kind of popular culture things. So I've got things about RoboCop and Jason Statham and David Lynch, and just other things where I'm overthinking in a different way. But throughout, I'm not thinking about how I'm doing this. I know that I am doing this, and that I'm, you know, that it's got quite a, you know, it's got decent functionalities and features out of the box, and I can just kind of focus on the content itself. You know, so it's much easier to get into a habit when the barrier to re-entry is low. So that broadly is why I'd kind of recommend Quarto, especially for kind of technical blogging. It abstracts enough away, but it provides ways into styling and customizing and redesigning things if you're so inclined. So thank you.
Thank you so much. What a welcome break from WordPress, for example. It seems like such a simpler way of doing it.
Yeah.
And it's a great reminder, actually, like both yourself and anyone out there who does have technical blogs or projects that you're working on. If you let Jamie know, we can give you a shout out on the Discord, maybe a couple other places, just to get more eyeballs on it. Because it looks really nice, and it looks like there's loads of really cool stuff on there. But yeah, happy to see it. Thank you. Next up we have Miriam, who's going to do a talk on Guess the Country, a cool new filter, I think.
So I haven't really included an introduction, so I'll just introduce myself. My name is Miriam. I'm a product designer, aka the enemy, but just joking. I do come from a computer science background, so I used to be a front-end developer, and then I moved into product design. So today I'm going to talk about a filter that I built. It's an AR filter that was launched on Instagram. And I built it using a software called Spark AR, which uses visual coding. So I'll just play this so you can see what I'm talking about.
Scream leaf, scream leaf, scream leaf. Guess the country. To our key. A. To our. Turkey. Shut.
So it's just a few clues, and people have to guess the name of the country. Has anyone seen this, by the way? No? So the reason I want to talk about it today is because I actually learned so many things from building this filter that I'm implementing today in my product design job. First of all, shipping fast and iterating. I used to be set in my ways and not want to ship something until it's perfect. And I ended up shipping this filter with just 10 different clues, and I'm so happy I did that. Oh, okay. Yeah, I actually ended up getting some clues from the people that were using it, so that ended up being quite helpful. In my day-to-day, I worked a lot on MVPs, and we tend to ship quickly, especially for startups and scale-ups, and see how the product is being used and use that data to move forward. Which takes me to data-driven decision-making. I spent so many hours watching how people were using my filter, and it was just so much fun. And I realized that the more far-fetched the clues were, the more engagement it got. So things like this, that's a column BA, Colombia. There were a few examples like this where it got so much engagement because it was quite far-fetched. As a product designer, I tend to interact a lot with our users. I do lots of pulse surveys, lots of interviews to get to know how the users are actually interacting with the products. Because what I've realized is it never lands the way that you intend it to be. And then lastly, maintaining momentum. This was my failure when it comes to the filter. It ended up reaching 1 billion impressions, and even Edinburgh News wrote an article on it. But I only built it on Instagram, and I didn't build it on TikTok. And what people ended up doing is stealing the idea and rebuilding another filter on TikTok. Or lots of people were taking screen recordings on Instagram, then taking it to TikTok. So I missed out on a huge opportunity there, and it took me 2 years to actually build it on TikTok. Maintaining momentum is really important when it comes to products too. I've worked on so many features where we would ship it out, people would love it, and then the company has so many priorities, they don't end up iterating on that feature, and it goes down the backlog. And then once we actually go back to it, the momentum is gone. So I've included the QR code of the filter on TikTok if anyone wants to try it out for yourselves.
Everyone give that a go. I think that's, I don't know, maybe the first filter that we've had at the JS. Don't hold me to that, that might be a lie. Break time, 5-10 minutes, and then we'll come back and have 4 more speakers. So get some pizza, get some drinks. Hello, thank you for coming back so promptly. The next talk we have is from James, talking about as a musical instrument in JavaScript.
Hello. Quick shout out to Jamie, Alan and Victoria for all of the work they've done behind the scenes and in front of the camera to make tonight happen. It's not a trivial amount of work. My name is James T. Harding. If you want to connect with me after the talk, I will be in the pub. You can also visit my website, which is conveniently myname.com, where you'll find links to my LinkedIn and other more professional things like that too. I am a self-taught developer. I have been working in tech for almost exactly 1 year. And before that, I was working in media and I did a music degree. So I wanted to make something a bit fun using that background to show you guys tonight. I'm interested in applying the things that I've learned from working in engineering to music. And in particular, I'm interested in looking at musical instruments through the lens of user-centric design, which is not something I'd encountered before working in tech. In order to show you why what I've done is interesting, I need to give you a music degree's worth of information in about 1 minute, so good luck. Panpipes. Very simple idea. You blow through one of the tubes and it makes a noise. The way that you scale that is you have lots of tubes and then you can choose which one you blow through. Obviously a very simple concept, but it takes you from making one noise to making lots of noise very quickly in an intuitive way. The way that we make that even more scalable is by turning it into a pipe organ. The first pipe organs were actually invented about 300 BC. It's not as new a thing as people imagine that it is. What we're doing is we're operating the pipes that we play. They work in the same way as panpipes do, but we're operating them through a console with a series of essentially buttons to decide which one comes on. This has a number of immediate advantages. 1, we can play multiple notes at once. 2, you get to sit down while you do it. 3, the number of pipes operable by a single musician is exponentially larger. Medieval organs are the kind of maximalist version of this. In this one, you see we've got 4 different manual keyboards. There's a footboard at the bottom, so you can get really low notes. And you can pull out these stops to access different ranks of pipes, which means you get different noises made even with the same pitch classes. So you've got lots and lots of buttons, lots and lots of noises that you can make. Today, the piano keyboard of the type that you see these manuals in is the dominant way that keyboard players interface with their musical instruments. But it has a number of disadvantages, mainly because you've got the accidental notes in the top row and the natural notes in the bottom row. It's a lot harder to play music which uses those accidental notes. It takes classically trained musicians several years to learn how to do that, when really it should be something quite simple. So in the 1850s, quite a leap forward in time there, we've got people starting to experiment with how to make keyboards which are more easy to use. This is a C-graph button accordion. And they've arranged the notes diagonally up and downwards to make it easier to play a pattern in one key and another without having to figure out a different fingering. You just start it in a different place and play the same pattern. This is an example of a Janko keyboard. It's the same idea, but it's actually a piano instead of an accordion. If you play a pattern starting on any note, it will sound the same, but in a different key. This is an example of a Terpstra keyboard. We're using a hexagonal design so that we've got 3 different axes in which we can control the pitch. This one allows you access to microtonal pitches, which you wouldn't see on a normal keyboard instrument. So it opens up an entire realm of pitches that wouldn't normally be possible. And that brings us to the weakness of having a keyboard in the first place, which is that the person that designed the keyboard has to have known in advance what notes you wanted to play in order to give you a button to play them. So that's when the Andes Martino comes in. In this instrument, you slide a metal ring along a conductive ribbon, so you're able to select any frequency between the bottom and the top ranges with no limits at all on what that might be. You operate the sound that frequency plays at, the volume and so on, using the console that you see this player with the left hand is controlling there. This is an electronic instrument. You'll see there's a keyboard at the top there. It looks a bit odd if you're familiar with keyboards. That's because the spacing has been widened in order to use it as a guide for where you are on the string. So that's the sort of background that I was coming into this project with. I wanted to see if I could make something that let you play any note, but in a way that was intuitive and that classically trained musicians would be able to pick up quickly. So I decided to use Tone.js. It's a JavaScript library that wraps the web audio API and makes it a little less cumbersome to use. Ross McKelvey did a great talk about the web audio API a few months ago, which you can catch on the YouTube if you're interested in it. But for this project, I wanted to focus on the interface, not on the actual making of noises in the browser. So it was a good fit for me here. In order to use this, you have to get permission from the user to make noises on their computer. And Tone allows you to do this by calling tone.start, which is an asynchronous method. You create a musical instrument using a variety of presets which they've made for us. You can configure them in quite an extensive way. I wasn't particularly interested in that, so I copied and pasted an example, and it's great. I love it. But that's something fun to play with in the future. And then to actually make a noise using the synth that you've created, you call that synth with trigger attack, attack being the musical term to mean the beginning of a note, and you tell it what frequency you want that note to play at. I'm getting my frequency from the position of the user's finger across the touchscreen or their mouse on a disk. The hardest part of this project was choosing the right frequency, because the way that humans hear frequencies is logarithmic, and the way that humans see screens is not. So here's my attempt at translating from one to the other. If anybody knows maths and can see a way to do that more efficiently, I would love to know how. So you can play my touchscreen instrument using this QR code if it scans, or that URL if it doesn't. I'm going to give a quick demo. I don't have a touchscreen rigged up to the streaming thing, but I will be available in the pub to play tunes for you if you would like. So, got to enable the sound permission from the user. Here's the x-axis. And on the y-axis, I put volume. Thank you very much.
It's a very wonderful and probably the quickest live demo that we have ever seen. We'll be talking to you in the pub after that because that looked really cool. Next up we have Vlad, who's going to do a talk on Keep 'em.
Give me 30 seconds to connect everything.
Sorry, we threw you in it just there.
All right. Oops, where is it? Okay, so that's weird. Hi everyone, my name is Vlad, and I'm excited to be here tonight. Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you, share a bit of information about myself, and tell about an iOS application, Keep 'em, that is a tool that helps people learn foreign languages. Yeah, as I said, my name is Vlad. I'm a software engineer at Lantec. In short, we help property developers find off-market land and build new houses and kind of trying to solve housing crisis in the UK. I also worked for a gaming company, a customer experience orchestration company, and IQVIA, which is one of the largest healthcare data management corporations. Yeah, left coding, left travel. Scotland is like a perfect place to explore. Yeah, recommend everyone. But enough about me. So keep 'em. First of all, has anyone tried learning foreign language? Probably you worked with apps like these ones, maybe these ones exactly, like Memrise. This is the one I've used. Duolingo is probably the largest, the most popular app in the world, and Puzzle English is the one also very popular across like Russian-speaking countries, like so post-Soviet region. Yeah, they're all great apps, but they all share same like limitations, I'd say. First of all, they have predefined list of words and phrases you can learn. Memrise and Duolingo, for example, even give you like a learning path. So you go through exercises, you gradually introduce to new words and phrases and like grammar concept, etc. And these are like all great, but at a certain point it becomes like not enough, and you need some other tool where you can introduce words and phrases you want, like basically add new vocabulary to this software, which is like impossible, at least in the ones I've tried. And also this language learning concept is basically limited to language pairs. Like if you know English and you learn French, you're given French words and English translations for them. And it's impossible to introduce another languages into this. So if you learn French and Japanese, I don't know, you have to constantly switch between the languages in the app. And it's like not the best user experience. Yeah, so as I said, as a result, this is helpful for beginners. A simple way to introduce yourself to a new language, but quickly as you like progress, as your needs become more advanced, these apps become insufficient. So how Keep'em might help? When developing Keep'em, we had two main ideas to solve these two issues. First of all, users should be able to add any words and phrases they want and build their like personal vocabulary. So they will have those words, those phrases they are interested in. And secondly, they should be able to learn multiple languages at once. In Keep'em, for example, you can have a single record with a word and its translation to all the languages you're interested in. I will show you it in a demo in a second. Oops. So here's how the app looks like. I can go to, yeah, I think that's better. So, for example, here you can see that we are learning French, and for now we don't have any words added. Let's add a new one. Let's do with something simple. And yeah, for example, if you learn French and Russian and you know English, you can easily add translations in different languages. And for each translation, you can add a note. It can be anything, as you can see, but let's add something like this. Also, you can add text to like later simply search through the words and phrases. For example, let's add that I found this from a book, and this should have tag from books. And as you can see, when you press add, the word is in your vocabulary. So while you like building your vocabulary, eventually it will start looking something like this. Yeah, the scroll is not perfect, but it's smooth, trust me. Yeah, so you can open a card of each word, slide through them. For example, if you need like a pronunciation of a word, it's probably not, yeah, but it plays. I'm not sure how to enable it here, but yeah, we provide this functionality. Obviously, you can edit it, and one of the things you can always also do is like make words favorite. Yeah, so what we also have is like having a vocabulary is good but not enough. And obviously you should do something with this to memorize the words. And one of the most efficient ways of doing it is flashcards. People tend to do it like by writing actual words on pieces of paper. We digitize this approach. Let's go, for example, through favorite words. And as you can see, like there is a Russian translation on one side and French on the other side. So you can go through all of them and like check that you remember the word correctly. Once you've finished, you see the list, like a list of words you memorized. Yep, so that's it for the app. This is like a, kind of an MVP, I'd say. And it's, sorry, yeah. It's on the App Store, and what are the next steps? We got a feedback from our users. They said that they love the app. They love the core functionality we introduced and how it's different from the existing solutions in language learning area. But they asked for web version because most of people consume content on desktop, like watching movies or just surfing through the internet, and it's much simpler to switch to another browser tab and quickly copy paste a new word there. And also, bigger desktop screen is more suitable for managing large vocabularies, like large list of words, while smaller desktop or smaller mobile screen is more suitable for interactive experience like flashcards game I showed you previously. You can do it from anywhere, but when you're at home, you can open the desktop, open the web version, and basically do some more complex editing. Eventually, what we're aiming to achieve is Google or Google Docs-like experience, where each user will have personal space for words and phrases. They will be able to perform all the same actions as in the mobile app. And of course, it's 2024, so we are thinking of introducing an AI to further assist them in their language learning journey by suggesting translations or maybe words and phrases similar to what they have in their vocabulary from similar topics or whatever. Yeah, this is the design mockups. So this is a card view, and if you are more comfortable with tables, there is also a list view. There should be a demo, but I guess, am I on track?
Second. You have 1 minute, 3 seconds.
Yeah, where is the browser? Okay, Chrome is somewhere here. And yeah, so it's like a landing page. Nothing to show, actually, nothing much to show here, but just, sorry. Well, I guess it's not working. Well, never mind. Let's go back to QuickTime. Yeah, so also I wanted to take a moment and give credit to my spouse, Natalia. It was her idea. She developed the concept of the application, a list of core features, because she's a passionate language learner herself. She graduated from Harvard last year, and if you are interested in talented project manager or know who does, feel free to add her on LinkedIn and send her a message. Thank you. Here are QR codes for the iOS app and this work in progress web version. Literally nothing there yet, but if you want to give it a try, yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That sort of cross-language aspect of that seems really interesting because Duolingo is obviously quite bad for that and for hassling and haranguing. So hopefully that's a much nicer experience for learning languages. We're good. Next up, we have Daniel, whose talk is going to introduce us to UnJS. If that's...
My name is Daniel Rowe, and I'm going to talk about UnJS, which is probably not something you know or have heard about, I would guess. I am relatively new to Edinburgh. I moved up in January, so I'm enjoying the summer. I'm glad to have experienced it and look forward to whatever else this year brings. There are a few other projects I'm involved in other than UnJS. So Nuxt is what I spend most of my time doing. I'm a full-time open source developer. Before that, I had a small software as a service startup, and before that, a creative agency. And before that, crazy other things. Not from a tech, I studied law and then theology, and now I'm doing tech for some reason. I also have a few other things like pagespeed.dev, which you can find your core web vitals and share it on social media. First commit, you can find your first commit on GitHub, and a few other things too. Row.dev has some links to some of them, and it's my website and my name, and so on. But I want to talk about UnJS. Now, UnJS stands for Universal Unified JavaScript. And Nuxt, which is a framework for building web apps, it's been going since 2016. We have about 50,000 stars on GitHub. Lots and lots of companies use it. But it's not the biggest framework out there, but it is a framework. And we recently rebuilt it entirely from scratch. So we went back to first principles about 2 years ago, and we had some breaking changes in the ecosystem. It's built on Vue, and Vue had an upgrade to version 3. And there were some other changes too. And as part of that, we kept on building little utilities that we thought shouldn't just be for us, shouldn't just be for building this one framework. They should be shareable and usable. I really do believe in this kind of philosophy, right? This is open source philosophy. You're not just building an empire for yourself. You're sharing something you build with other people who also have something to contribute. And together you make something better. So that's where we came from, and that's what UnJS was born out of. It's a GitHub org, so if you go to github.com/unjs, you'll find lots of repositories. Or you can go to unjs.io and see a website with lots of different libraries. But tonight, I just want to introduce you to 5 of them that I think might be useful for each of us in our individual projects. You might have some use case for it. I would love that. And here they go. So ofetch is an opinionated wrapper around the native HTTP fetch. Because you want a consistent interface that works both in the browser and in Node environments. Conveniently, Node now has native support for fetch, which is fantastic. But this provides guarantees of how it operates. It adds utilities like request and response or request and response error hooks, things that Axios, for example, had. Axios, by the way, definitely shouldn't be used in modern projects. It's I think most people would agree on that. You should either use native fetch itself or wrap around it, something like this. And it allows extending it, providing defaults, creating pre-configured fetch instances, and it does things like automatically parse JSON responses if you're looking for a JSON response, so you don't have to handle that yourself. So the await fetch dot then r.json thing, you can completely get rid of that entirely. The pre-configured instances are incredibly useful. So you can create something that's for your API, for example, and then just reuse that throughout your app. And it is really nice just to be able to directly access the data that you're getting out at the end of the day, rather than having to do something else with it. Here's another library, unenv. So we use it in Nuxt to handle a lot of different things. But we build apps that run in web worker environments, as well as on Node or in the browser. And unenv as a whole, think of it as a package of polyfills and build time settings for lots and lots of different things that are relevant to your environment. So everything from NPM packages that are enormous but have tiny polyfills or tiny equivalents, to node replacements, to things that can be injected to provide sort of equivalent behavior in different environments. So if you're ever wanting to build something or compile something and want it to target different environments, this might be something you could check out. It allows us to do, when you plug these two together, so ofetch and unenv, we have another use case which it unlocks, which is the ability to create what we call a local fetch. So what looks like a network call that totally bypasses the network layer. So if you're running on the same machine and you have something that request should be piped to, so in a framework environment, you might want to make a request to another route on the same app that you're running. You can do something like that, and it saves you time and it's more performant. We have 3 more, so you can try out uncrypto. So if you have experimented with the Web Crypto API, you'll know that it's different in browser and node environments, and sometimes confusingly and, dare I say it, painfully different. So uncrypto is a wrapper around that makes it universally accessible in both places. If you ever need to do anything with cryptography, like anything from generating random UUIDs to handling like JWTs or other things like that, check out uncrypto. Pathe is a replacement for node path. So think of file system paths. You want to join them together, you want to normalize them, and a node, for example, has different behavior on Windows and Mac OS or Unix, POSIX-based environments. Pathe has a single unified approach that works in exactly the same way on all operating systems and in the browser, which is quite handy. UFO contains URL normalization tools, so think file system, but in the browser. So stuff like stringifying queries and putting them together and concatenating bits of URLs into other bits of URLs. So if you want to join stuff and you find that you end up having like a couple of forward slashes in place, it has got a whole Swiss Army knife of useful utilities that you might find helpful. If you're looking for a replacement for Express, if you're going to start a new project, don't use Express. It's great, but it's showing its years. Try H3. H3 is tree shakeable, so all of its utilities can be imported and used if you need them. It has a convenient API where there's an event coming in. You can directly return an object if you want a JSON response. It should be really nice and simple and fun to use. And it really is a lot faster in terms of starting. So this is a project that we built previously with Connect, which is an Express-like middleware moving to H3. It went from over 300 milliseconds to about 1 millisecond, so a lot faster. Unimport. So if you like the idea of utilities being auto-imported when you use them in your project, which you might not, that's fine. Unimport exists to auto-import them. So you define some presets. You say, these are the utilities I want to be auto-imported. It will generate some types, so your IDE knows what's available to you. You just type, and at build time, they'll be injected exactly where they're used. And this works in any bundler, so it will work just as well in Next.js as it would in Nuxt, or ESBuild, or whatever you're using. And it really does enable lots of helpful use cases, but if you really have to import it, it even exposes a virtual import, hash imports, that lets you make things explicit. And if you do command click into them, they do take you to the source. Standard env is a helpful utility that lets you detect the environment you're in. So what provider, what CI provider, are you on Vercel and Netlify, et cetera. We use it in Nuxt to provide zero config deployments to 20, 25 different providers, but you can use it separated from Nuxt. It's quite a useful, just very simple library to tell you what your environment is. Unplugin lets you write utilities, deep integrations into bundlers. And it lets you do it in a universal way. So you can write one plugin that can be plugged into any bundler. So whether that's Rollup or Vite or Webpack or ESBuild or RSPack or anything, you just plug it straight in. So we build most of the stuff for Nuxt this way, and it lets people pick the bundler that they want to use. When I write utilities separately, things like Fontaine, which helps eliminate or reduce layout shift with custom web fonts, I write it in unplugin. It was created by a guy called Anthony Fu, who's a fantastic open source wizard. And it lets you, it means that the thing that I've written, even though my use case is most often to use it in Nuxt, can be used by anybody from Astro to Docusaurus to Next.js. And that is an amazing sort of multiplier if you ever fancy doing some build tool integration. You can support all kinds of things that you might want to, like when it runs. You can use useful utilities like should we transform this or not, that even the bundlers themselves might not expose. And then it's as simple as making transformations to code. Unstorage is a provider-agnostic async KV storage API that works on everything from Cloudflare to Azure to Vercel to Redis to memory to file system. And you can squash all those different providers into one file system-like API and read and write them at runtime. And even dynamically mount and unmount and remount those different providers to your storage API. So if you ever find that you want to read and write some KV stuff, try Unstorage. It makes it provider agnostic. It's quite useful. Those are some of the providers we support. And I promise we're coming to the end. Not of the libraries, but just of some of them, just of the ones tonight. Magicast, or MagicAST, lets you programmatically modify JavaScript and TypeScript files. So you just load the file, treat it as an object, make some changes to it, and then write it back. So something like this, load file config.js, mod.exports.default.foo.pushb, and then write file, and B is there. So that's quite useful. We use that in Nuxt, and we let you install modules in the dev tools. And so when you do that, we write it back to the config file, so you've got it in place. And normally you wouldn't be able to do something like that to JavaScript without a little bit more complexity, but this makes it super simple for people to do that. And Nitro, I won't go into more details there. And it's a whole framework for building full stack web servers. So do check it out, it's fantastic, but I would just go on and on. And there are loads more, from better console logging to Radix 3 router, to listening on node servers, to handling node resolve utilities, to making hashes, reliable hashes of objects, to case conversion utilities like Kebab case or Pascal case in school. Kitty will help you write CLIs. Unbuild is a better build tool that wraps Rollup. Giget will help you clone stuff from GitHub or GitLab or anywhere else on the internet. RC9 will help you write configuration files, and so will C12 in slightly different ways. Defu will enable you to merge objects and respect defaults, and I could go on and on and on, but I promise I really will wrap up. If you're interested in any of that, check out the website, check out the Twitter account, ask me. I'm one of the team. I'm by no means responsible for, in fact, all or any of these libraries, but I'm involved on the team maintaining them. And let me know if there's anything, if you've got any questions or I can help in any way. Thanks.
Thank you so much, absolute trove. Thank you for the small slice, which I'm sure was just an absolute tiny little morsel of the other cool stuff. I want to know what Nitro is, so I'll see you at the pub later. Last but not least, Dale, who's going to talk about Overcome.
Okay, hi guys, I'm Dale. I guess I'm a founder of an app called Overcome. Overcome is an app that helps people deal with their mental health during relationship breakups, divorces, and just general heartbreak. So a little bit about me. I've known how to code for a few years at building websites and things. Last year I did Code Clan, so I could actually build software. But then during CodeClan, I got married during the final 2 weeks where you do your final project. So it meant my kind of portfolio on graduation wasn't that strong. So I thought I'd build kind of a killer app for myself. So I had kind of 2 criteria. The first was I didn't want it to be like a lame app. I wanted it to be something that could be like a fully fledged startup in itself. I also want to do something good, which doesn't necessarily mean societally good, but just not kind of building software for estate agents or anything like that. So I kind of wanted to build something which would kind of help me at different points in life. So I kind of looked at all the pain points I've ever had, and I realized the toughest thing I've ever gone through was actually a relationship breakup. So I was like, could I build something in that space? So every year, millions of people around the world experience the kind of pain and trauma that comes with relationship breakups for the most part. While you can get comfort from friends and family, kind of navigating the maze of emotions kind of requires a more structured support. So post-breakup, individuals often struggle with the need to communicate, and they quite often do regrettable actions like sending text messages to their exes and then regretting it the next morning. There's also a lack of resources really to help you process those quite complex emotions. And traditional therapy and counseling is kind of out of reach for a lot of people for various reasons, from cost, stigma, and geography. So I built Overcome, which is now on the App Store. And the kind of vision is that this app's going to provide a safe and structured and supportive platforms for individuals to navigate their breakup journey. Picture a combination of a personal journal, a counselor, and a supportive community all in your pocket. So at the minute, we don't have all of that. This is very much an MVP, but that's kind of the end goal. So just now, we have 4 main features. The first one is daily prompted journaling. So you can go on and you'll get a prompt so you can kind of journal your emotions. If you don't like that prompt, you can get a new prompt or you can just ignore it. Second, we have daily reflections, which might seem kind of cheesy, but when I was kind of doing kind of research into this and speaking to friends and family, quite a few people who'd gone through kind of divorces, especially, had used these kind of things they found on Instagram, screenshotted them, and then kind of used them as a personal mantra for like several months afterwards, which I thought was quite cool. Then we have a kind of killer feature, I think, called Vents, where you can send a text message to your ex, but it actually never leaves the app. So you get that kind of cathartic release without the regret the next morning. We also have resources where there's real-life breakup stories and kind of shows you that moving on is possible, along with articles on like how the brain works when it goes through emotions and things like that. So the kind of next step is to monetize the app in some way. I put monthly subscription here. I don't think it will be a monthly subscription. I think that'll be a one-off package. Ideally with these kind of features such as personalized recovery plan, a community forum where users can speak to each other, and the ability to engage directly with the content, leaving comments and things like that. Emotion tracking. On a daily basis at the moment, the user is prompted to put in their emotion that they're feeling. So it'd be really good to be able to visualize that and track to see how you are recovering emotionally. And along with premium content, such as videos and audio. So this is how I sort of started the app on Figma, like most people do. As you can see at the top is a horrible green kind of NHS-inspired app. It kind of gets a little bit nicer the further we go down. So I kind of planned it all out on that. This was the first time I built a project this big, so I kind of needed to draw it out. I then kind of stumbled upon no-code tools, and I thought, this looks pretty cool. So I built 90% of the app initially in Flutterflow, which is a no-code tool that uses Flutter kind of behind the scenes. It's incredible, and I really recommend people check it out. But I got about 80–90% there and realized I couldn't actually get the final part done. So at which point, I moved on to React Native with Expo. I love Expo. I think it's incredible. The documentation is shit, but everything else is really, really good. I did check to see that final 10–20%, if I could do it with Expo. The documentation said yes. So I powered ahead, but unfortunately I couldn't, not with that release. You can do now with SDK 50, I believe, but with 48 you couldn't. So I had to move them back to React Native, so eject Expo. So my final stack was React Native and Firebase. And just some stats on the app. It launched in October. I've done no marketing except one LinkedIn post. I've had 865 downloads, 635 registered users, over 1,000 journal submissions, event submissions just over 3,000, and 2 real 5-star reviews, which for a portfolio piece which was just designed to get me a job, the idea that that's actually touched someone and 2 people have felt so strongly they actually want to leave a review is pretty cool to me. So the next steps of the app is to build it out more premium features, initially free. And the reason for that is I have no idea how to get user feedback when users are using an app like this and potentially crying into an app while they're doing it. I don't really want to pop up and be like, hey, what's the feedback here? So I think I'm going to have to do some like A/B testing on premium features, but do it on a free level first before putting it behind a paywall. One of the benefits of, I guess, the ideally short-term use that a user would have is I can add things behind a paywall and it wouldn't affect users who are currently going through stuff because they will hopefully move on quite quickly. And that's me. If you want to add me on LinkedIn, there you go.
Very impressive. Hopefully, I don't know if anyone wants to give it a try. Maybe some more 5-star reviews will come your way. Thank you to all the speakers who came tonight. Again, like a new kind of format. So let Jamie know what you think if you want to see more of this kind of thing. It's basically just a cool way to see the kind of really interesting stuff that you guys are all up to. So yeah, thank you everyone who volunteered. And if you're interested after having seen these ones of maybe giving speaking a try yourself, if you've got that project or that idea that's sort of been percolating and you want to pull the trigger on it, again, talk to Jamie. I'm giving all these jobs to Jamie, so please just throw everything his way. Any more housekeeping? Oh yeah, next meetup, 18th of June. We're going to have Luce talking about MongoDB and Dave talking about automating his brewery with Node.js. Very cool. And the mentorship program for those of you who signed up to be a mentor is now live. If you go to scottishtechnology.club/mentoring, you can see all the people who we've got all the profiles up for. Get in touch if you want to chat with them. If you see that and you also want to be a mentor, get in touch with me. That's one of my jobs. Can't put that on Jamie, unfortunately. But we'd love to have you all there and get you guys talking. Again, I think that's it. Oh, yeah. Any blogs, any projects that you want shared more openly on the Discord or in different sort of places that we have in our community, again, talk to Jamie. And thank you all for coming. We're going to go to the pub at the Fountain Bridge Fox after this, so come along if you don't have school or work in the morning or don't really care about being a bit worse for wear. Thank you.